Alright, hello once again. This is Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College. I've been coming to you with a series of video presentations for the Rankin Technical College Application and Web Development AWD1111 .NET Framework with Web Databases class. I am up to Chapter 18 of 18 in our textbook, which is ASP.NET MVC with Entity Framework and CSS by Naylor. Again, I'm doing this a little bit out of order. I have done the first 8 chapters, part of Chapter 9, and then chapters 14 through 18. So, Chapter 18, as you can see, is entitled Responsive Websites, Styling for Mobile, Cell, and Tablet-Sized Devices. All right. No problem with the title, except to me, the author says here, building a responsive site basically means allowing the site to respond to the size of the screen it is being displayed on and reformat itself accordingly. And I 100% agree with that. So it's not just making it look on mobile and tablet, it's making it look good on any kind of device. So as it says, this chapter will introduce CSS media queries. Media queries are typically used so that you have control as a developer over the way your site looks based on the type of media that's being used to view the site. So, as it says here, CSS includes a concept called media queries, which lets you assign styles to a page based on the browser's width and height. All right. Media queries let you send different styles to browsers based on screen widths. For example, less than 480 pixels, between 480 and less than 768 pixels, etc. These different sizes are typically known as breakpoints. Now, that's different than a breakpoint in an integrated development environment. There, a breakpoint is where you stop and the code stops so that you can do inspections. Here, the breakpoint means that if it's less than a breakpoint, in this case, you'll probably want your screen size and your screen to react in one way, but as it gets over that breakpoint, you want it to act a different way. And the author gives an example here. With this example, if you take a look at it, what it says is if your screen width is between 481 and 768 pixels, all right, we're assuming you have a tablet. So you could style it for a tablet. If it's between 0, which wouldn't really make any sense, but as long as it's 480 pixels or less, you'd be assuming that it would be a cell phone, and that's the code that would be hit. Now, although it's not mandatory that you do this, it's kind of convention that you put all of your media queries at the end of your CSS. All right. One thing to consider when designing a responsive website is which device you're designing for first. There's desktop first and there's mobile first. All right. In the past, virtually all websites were designed desktop first, and mobile was kind of an afterthought because it's just been really since probably about the last two years or so that phones and tablets have kind of usurped, they've taken over the lead. So in other words, more people tend to go and view websites on mobile devices, be they a phone or a tablet, than do as it was in the old days when people typically used a desktop and then a laptop. So as mentioned here, in desktop first, you can add styles with several columns and all the bells and whistles you want and then tweak it for something smaller. On the other hand, when you go mobile first, you create the smaller page design without all the bells and whistles, and then you build it outward. Now, the author takes the desktop first approach, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with doing it either way. What I have read, seen, etc., is many people today, if you are an experienced web developer, believe that you should actually develop for the mobile first, because if you can get it to work on mobile, it's much easier to scale upward than it is to scale downward. All right. It might not seem very obvious at first, but the easiest place to start when developing for different size devices is your desktop's browser. Simply resizing the browser is one of the most useful tools you will find for getting started with developing for different screen sizes. There are no substitutes for actually testing on a physical device, but Google Chrome does offer an attempt to simulate behavior on popular devices. It says to use this simulation, you need to open Developer Tools, hitting F12, and that will allow you to use the device mode feature where you can toggle between different devices. So here they're showing you how your site would look on an iPhone 6. And to be fair, virtually all browsers that I know of offer something like this. Chrome, I recommend using Chrome for all of your development because I think it's the best browser out there. There are a lot of newer browsers, and some people might be able to give me a really good argument and say that some of those newer browsers are better than Chrome. You know what? You might very well be right. But I've really never had problems, per se, using Chrome. So you can inspect events such as hover by inspecting, yeah, we talked about that before. My normal preference as the author here is to start by just resizing the browser at first and then use device mode. All right? So it would make sense, I think, to start by changing the style of the home page. It says this actually covers a few topics in one page, so it's a good place to start. Figure 18.2 shows the home page when the browser is resized to be a cell phone size or a phone size. Ignoring the Navbar for now, let's focus on the bestseller images. They overlap one another. So in other words, this looks very unprofessional. So does this. All right. In fact, quite often what you see when you go down to this size is if, for example, if this is your navigation bar, it may look more like this, which is typically called a hamburger menu. And this might stack so that each one of these is on top of one another, for example. As a reminder, as shown here on page 565, the author says, here is the HTML that generates these images. And then on the bottom of that, he adds, you can see from this HTML that each image is contained inside of a div with a class call MD3. Well, again, MD is for a medium-sized device. So we're not doing anything to handle a smaller device than that. In Google Chrome, you can see the width and height of the current browser in the upper right corner when you use Developer Tools. Well, let's look. So I'm here, just happen to look up definition for responsive design, but if I hit F12 and I go in the upper corner here, there it is. Well, you may or may not have noticed it. If you look up there, there you go. To fix the issues with the home page being squashed, we're going to only use columns in the site when the width is over 900 pixels. So you'll do this when it's over 900. This means that the website will now appear in a columnar layout only when it's wider than 900 pixels. So when you remove that, you know what? It's already looking better. Does it still need work? Sure it does. But it's already looking better. All right. Keep going back to Flexbox, and it is definitely worth your while to take a look at Flexbox. All right. There are a couple more issues with the main content of the home page. The Shop Now button overlaps the content above it, and the images are stuck to the left edge of the window. Well, that's pretty simple to do. As far as overlapping what's above it, putting about a margin there, and here we're putting a what? A 0 margin on top and bottom and a 10 pixel margin on right and left. Doing that, again, what you see is it's looking better and better. It is by no means perfect. All right. It's funny, I used to work with a guy who, I've always wondered this, so while it's in my head. He used to always say perfection is the enemy of good enough. All right. And it looks like Voltaire was the one who said that, so you can see it's been a while. But basically, my friend Doug, who said this, what he meant was, if you keep tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking and tweaking, whatever it is you're working on, first of all, you'll probably never be satisfied. And second of all, you won't be doing anything else. So typically after a while, you have to determine, yeah, this is about as good as I think it's going to get, and move on. Although we've only focused on the home page, these changes also have profound effects on the rest of the site. For example, all the forms on the site now have labels that are more in a block format as opposed to an inline block. With an inline block, you've got the label and then you've got the text box or whatever, but in a block format, the label's on one line and the text box or whatever is on the next line. All right, styling the navigation bar for mobile cell. We are now going to restyle the nav bar and add a very simple example of displaying the menu on, or when a user hovers over it, so it can be used easily on a mobile device. We're not going to use the bootstrap function for showing hiding the menu because it relies on the bootstrap JavaScript files to function. Why they made that decision, not sure, but they made that decision. I guess one thing that you could say about this is, as a developer, you have so many different decisions to make. All right, it's kind of like, imagine this way, that you're taking a long trip someplace, wherever you're going. Let's say that you live in St. Louis, Missouri. All right, and you want to go to New York City. Well, you know, you can go in and you can go into Google and type driving directions from St. Louis, Missouri to New York City, and it'll give you that. You can go to your GPS and you can do that, and it might give you the best route, the most scenic route, etc. Is the best route the fastest route? It may or may not be. That type of an idea. All right. So again, all I'm getting to is there's many different ways of doing just about anything, including styling like this. All right. We're going to make the navigation bar still appear blue with white text, but we're also going to remove all the animations when someone views the site on a smaller device. That's typically done. If you're going to use a fade in, a fade out, etc., you don't do that with phones, for example. There are a lot of reasons for doing that. It can be much easier to use it on a mobile device when you don't have all the bells and whistles. And also, some of that stuff can take up a lot of horsepower, and you're typically running, when you're running on a mobile device, especially a phone, limited battery, limited power to begin with. And you can see how much better it is looking. All right. We are now going to add some styles to initially hide and then show the navigation bar on smaller devices. First, add the menu text to the top of the nav bar and turn it white by updating the max width. All right, so there's your media query for a max width of 899 pixels. Okay, so we got a 20 pixel margin bottom. All right, this is all in there. Content menu, nav bar white, so take a look. changes the navigation bar as shown. Adding these styles has pushed the nav bar element down the screen slightly. So to correct this, we add a new style in here. Right there. After this, add a style to apply the clear fix before the nav bar collapse. These two changes together will make this. All right, looking pretty nice. You know, that's a little, now that I look at it, that's kind of a scary image they've got there of a little kid, but whatever. Now to hide the nav bar apart from the menu text, add the following style. This also sets the size of the items in the bar to be a little bit bigger. When the nav bar collapse element is hidden, the nav bar now appears as shown right here. We are going to make the navigation bar display when a user hovers over the menu bar, not just the menu text. The reason the author has done this, he says, is purely technical. You can only display a related element when hovering over an element. You cannot display something completely unrelated. All right. Now, again, he's gone through there and done this. So now, as you can see, okay, you have I'm sure you have your own opinion as to whether he's making this better or whether he's making this worse. One thing to really kind of look at in here too is most of the time you're gonna find areas like this. You notice there's no waste of real estate here. In other words, it's basically 100% here and here. And again, especially if you're looking at it by using a phone, it's probably not a bad idea. All right. All right. I'm at about 18 minutes. I don't think this is a bad place here to stop. So this selectively adding columns, I'm going to pick it up here in the next part of the lecture.